fighting in Las Vegas, November 9th. Please welcome the man himself, GM3, Gerald Meerschaert. Gerald, how we doing? Is that a little red shiner I see starting on the eye?
Oh, I think that's Velcro.
Little matte burn or
So
something?
yeah, that's one of the fun things about fighting is you get bruises in fun and unique ways that you weren't really privy to beforehand. And one of the big things is if someone doesn't tape their, especially little gloves, and you're wrestling, there's cross faces and stuff, the Velcro will like peel off the first layer of your skin. Feels really, really good when you shower afterwards.
Yeah, I got the matte burn on the knees right now, so having that on the face, I'm good. That's not for me. And a story I want to start with that I just saw is that the Ritter and you have trained before together. Is this correct?
Yeah, yeah. It was actually not that long ago he came to the gym, and I think the plan was and probably still is that he might come and do some training camps with us before some of his future fights. Like I know he wanted to before this fight, but obviously that it's not really going to work. So, but is good training with him, good guy. Obviously focused on the fight right now, but it's all good things. No, I'm not really putting too much stock into what happened in training because, he was visiting, trained with us for like a week. We got a lot of work in together, but training is training and a fight's a fight, so it's a little bit different.
How long ago was that?
Man, it couldn't have been more than like 2 or 3 months ago. It's
Oh, it was
pretty
recent.
recent. Yeah.
I mean, and I know you said you can't really take a whole lot away compared to a fight, but like you did meet the guy, so first
Yeah.
impressions, like what were they?
Um, I feel like honestly, I feel like he's gonna have a hard time making 85.
Big guy.
Like just yeah, just with his frame, I feel like I know I heard before that he doesn't walk around that heavy, which, some guys they walk around real lean or they walk around close to their weight. But when you got that big of a frame, like I don't have a fun time making 85. And I'm not the biggest 85er, but I just have I was surprised when he came over that the fight was going to be at 85, especially because I know ONE FC they have the hydration test, but it's been proven time and time again that it's very easy to beat that. And like you can still cut weight. And that's, they continue to have issues with lots of guys like either just not cutting weight and missing the hydration, or they cut weight and they still pass it or don't pass it. Like it's not, you know, it's a step in the right, in their defense, a step in the right direction. Like it's good that they're trying to do that, but to find a foolproof system is just, it's hard to do. And unless everyone agrees on a, fair playing field, or I'm going to fight within my walking weight, which is like, if you're trying to get an advantage, it's a competition. You're going to do whatever you can. So I understand that. But yeah, that was my first impression was like, I figured he would have fought at 205, but if he says he can make it, he can make it. And, we'll see what happens.
And something that I feel like amongst the fans you're known for throughout your career is derailing these hype trains, so to speak. Just using your longevity, durability, and getting that win whatever way you have to. Obviously not a young buck, but making his UFC debut. Are you looking at this opportunity against De Ridder as another example to prove yourself against the up and comers, so to speak?
Yeah, I mean, I'm looking at the fight as its own unique thing by itself, but all in a positive light. He's a two division champ. Obviously, it's in another organization, but like you become a two division champ in any of the other like, high end organizations, that's not nothing. You know what I mean? And his record's good. He's only got losses to one guy. He's very tough. He's very good at what he does. So I think that's a really big win for me. You know what I mean? Whether or not it's his first fight in the UFC, I'm not really concerned so much about that as much as like, I want the prestige and like the good look of like having that win on my record and like hopefully getting me into fighting a ranked opponent after that.
And is that kind of why you don't shy away from taking these? I don't, like a lot of veterans you talk to, they don't want to fight younger guys or other promotional champions. That's not the fights they're interested in. Like, is that why you like taking those fights? Because you feel like it does bump your stock with the wins?
Yeah, I mean, there's a couple reasons. One reason being like if I hope to get to that position, I'll also be in a position where like I, rankings matter to a point, but if you win impressively enough, that's the big thing, right? And we've seen guys have fights against guys that weren't ranked or anywhere near ranked, and if they look good enough, they might get bumped into the rankings, or they get a really big fight after that. especially with MMA, it's like it's much more what's going on right now and are you available? And like we've seen, we just had a guy who was ranked number 8 fight for the title. And there's no reason that anyone in the top 10 shouldn't be allowed to necessarily, but it's not like there's so much time in between fights where it's always going to be the number 1 or number 2 rank guy. You know what I mean? So I think willingness to fight, that's something the fans like, that's something the company likes. And you want to stay active and make money, like you make money by fighting. You know what I mean? So at some point, if I'm going to be willing to fight guys up or down, like, everyone says like, well, I'll fight anybody, but it's another thing to do it. And another thing, for sure, experience wise, and I'm not like the oldest guy, but I'm not the youngest either. So it's kind of at the point now where like anyone I fight compared to me is going to be an up and comer, most likely. You know what I mean? Outside of a select few, it's pretty much going to be here's the next young guy. So it's, I kind of pigeonholed myself in that position at this point.
And talk to me about this fight and the style specifically, because two submission artists on paper, right? That's what it looks like. Sometimes that means it's just going to be a striking battle. So, what are you looking at this one as?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, his bread and butter is his grappling. You know what I mean? I would say, even if you just look at his fights, his wrestling's not bad. He uses his length well. He does a lot more like judo style takedowns. He likes to valley drop takedown. He likes to try to trip people up on the inside. Even if he shoots in, he's going to drive you to the cage and try to jump on your back. So, he uses it in a way to complement his jiu-jitsu, and that's really where he shines. He uses his length well on the ground, top or bottom. He's good at setting traps and being patient on top, taking his time, putting his weight on guys. The stand up, he uses it is definitely not going usually to create damage, right? Like he's doing it to like set his takedowns up or to establish a range where he keeps you from being too aggressive so he can close the distance a little more safely. I think that's pretty fair to say. And then for me, I'm obviously got a lot of submissions on my record, but I go kind of the more like true MMA fighting route. Like I'm fighting guys on the feet a lot more. I would say compared to him, I'm a little more wrestle heavy on the grappling. But I do some slick stuff on the bottom too. I got a sneaky armbar submission in the UFC. I've done a lot of different things and unique attacks on stuff that like guys aren't really used to. So, I think the spots where we're good, we're both really good. And the spots where we're not that great, that's kind of probably going to determine the fight. And, we'll get in there, mix it up, and see what happens.
Do you have a preference though? Like, I want to out grapple this guy and show him that I can, or I want to stay on the feet and knock this guy out. Like, do you have preference heading to this one, or like you said, MMA mind, whatever happens, happens?
Yeah, more MMA in mind. Like I want to win first and foremost.
Sure.
But the big thing is I want to dictate the pace and the action. I want to decide where the fight takes place. So if that means I defend his takedown and stay on top, or I make him stand up, or I get the takedown and I'm on top of him and determining what's happening, that's kind of we're gonna play that by ear, but I want to make sure that I'm dictating the pace a little bit more and I don't let him get comfortable.
And you mentioned this earlier. It does seem like this fight is a fight for a ranking, if you will. With his name, he comes in, wins, rank. You beat an opponent like that, back to the ranks. So, what I don't know if you've seen this week, Dana White absolutely going off on the ranking system because Roundtree stayed at number 8. Like, what are your thoughts about the current system? Does it work? Could there be improvements?
You can always make improvements to anything, right? But I'm gonna be honest. All I have heard is like complaints about the ranking system, which are justified in my opinion. But I also don't really know what the criteria is. I don't think that's ever been explained. It was my understanding, and I could be wrong, that because at first I remember way back Dana saying like, "Well, you guys create the rankings," and in my head I'm like, "That's kind of weird." Like I figured the UFC would have decided the
Right.
rankings, and then I start finding out more, which is funny enough, I'm in the organization. I don't even know what the hell's going on. I don't ask a lot of questions. I kind of just show up and fight, but I find out more and more. They're like, "Oh yeah, it's a lot of different media members," which is makes sense. Make it third party, so you're not too much influencing what's going on, and they're the ones that set the rankings. But I've never heard like an exact and it'd be hard to make a point system, but it's like, I don't know how much popularity has a factor in it. I don't know how much like recent win, strength of schedule, who you've beaten, how you beat them. Like, I don't know. Because like to your point, Roundtree's ranked number 8. He gets the title fight. He looks as good as anyone's looked, right? No matter what's going on with Alex Bahia, he still looked good. Like it doesn't matter what's going on. If you agree to fight, you agree to fight. And I've had plenty of fights where stuff was going wrong or I didn't feel the best in there and I've still won. And I've had it on the other side where I go in there and I look like a turd and I lose. But that's the thing is if you sign the dotted line and you step in, you got to accept everything that comes with it. And after a performance like that, I don't see how you can't make an argument for him being at least in the top 5.
I
You know
agree.
what I mean? So yeah, them not moving him and be well, because even the fights before that, if your argument was, well, those guys were only ranked at a certain level, it's like, yeah, but he still looked good. So is it more about how you look or who they've beaten or I don't know. I would have to, and that's the other part too, like, and this is kind of the same thing with judging. There's an outline of what is supposed to be like, you know, more prevalent to the scoring. But then you see plenty of times when guys will argue, like damage is supposed to be the big thing now. But then you'll still see sometimes a guy that does a grappling wrestle heavy attack and doesn't necessarily like go for the finish, just kind of holds him down. They're like, oh, well, he had more control, so he won. It was like, well, which is it? Like, 'cause he got cracked on the feet, and like, if you can make the argument and that's why it's okay, that's different than saying, no, this is like the criteria and that other guy should have got it. You know what I'm saying? So I think just making just being transparent. You don't have to say who's making the rankings, but just tell us what are you basing them off of,
Yeah.
so we can all do a better job. Kind of like the rules with the reffing and the judging. It's like we always have these talks about changing it, but it's like, hey, just be transparent. Put it out there somewhere. Like I don't care who's judging, and if again, I always look at it like if you finish the fight, you finish the fight. That's what your goal should be. But at least let me know what ranks the highest and go down from there. Because if it's damage, then guys will go for more damage. If it's control, we'll go for more control. But we got to be crystal clear on what exactly we're trying to accomplish in a fight.
Rankings, officiating, and judging. It all needs a little bit of more clarity. I don't know about reform, but clarity for sure. And
Yeah.
Gerald, another one for you here. Right now, 12 finishes, looking at your 13th in the UFC. I believe that's correct. But regardless, that'll tie you for 5th overall or 8th overall with like 5 other people for all time finishes. Is it possible for you to catch Charles Oliveira at 20? Do you have that many fights left in you?
Yeah, I feel like I do. You know what I mean? If I keep fighting, 2, 3 fights a year, I think that's very doable. Um, Charles, however, is also still fighting. So, I don't
True.
know how many more he's gonna get to, but I feel like I could definitely get there. My body's held up really well for all the mileage I've put on it. I'm very fortunate in that aspect. I can still form coherent sentences and tie my shoes, which is like I say that kind of jokingly, but it really is, as we see with more and more stuff coming out, it's a big thing, and that's something, every day I got to think about. Because I got a lot of fight left in me, but especially at this point in my career, you know, you could have a freak accident in training, something could happen in a fight, you could have an all-out war, for the ages, and like that can just take a toll on you, and then you got to reassess and figure out what you want to do or how your life's going to look after fighting. So it's always in the back of my mind nowadays, you know what I mean? So I'm always kind of like taking tabs on like how I'm feeling, how my memory's been lately, like, nothing crazy, but I'm always aware of it and cognizant of like I have to be able to function after this. Um but I do feel like I could get for sure to 20 finishes, but we'll have to see how everything shakes out until then.
2025 right around the corner. Do you have any specific goals in the octagon for next year?
Oh man, if I could put together another, 3 fight win streak next year, I got a tall order ahead of me first. If I can get finish 2024 with that, uh, you know, I feel like that puts me in a really good position to, either get a ranked opponent or at least get on the main card of like a bigger fight and like raise my stock that way. Cause that's, you can go about two ways, right? You can either fight ranked guys wherever, or just give me a good name on like a numbered event on like a big pay-per-view. And I'd be more than happy with that also, because really that's more eyeballs, more publicity. And I at this point kind of seems like that's more important. So if I can do that and just put out great performances and finish really tough guys and enough people see it, I think that'll take me where I want to go.
Totally. And speaking of pay-per-views, Paul Craig fighting on a pay-per-view against Bo Nickal. Did you end up training with Paul Craig like you said?
No, I thought so. Yeah, I don't know what's going on because I don't like know his management necessarily. I don't think or what I haven't ever talked to him personally, but I was told that he was coming to train with us. Hasn't been here yet. Still could. I have no idea. Maybe something happened. We had a bunch of hurricanes down here, so like I could understand if that kind of changed his plans. You know what I mean? But yes, that has not happened. But he's got a really tough fight ahead of him too. Um, that would still be if he's not going to come do camps with us. That would still be something I'm interested in, especially if he beats Bo Nickel. But that's I'm focused on De Ridder right now, and we'll kind of see what all happens after that.
Well, my last question about an opponent other than De Ridder is the opposite end of Craig, Bo Nickel. If Bo Nickel were to beat Paul Craig, is that a hype train you could potentially see derailing someday?
I mean, if it matches up, it matches up. I've actually trained with him too before, and that was like another guy where he ended up like he's affiliated with ATT and all that, and
Mm-hmm.
he'll come down there with camps. But that was another guy that like I didn't at the time didn't think we would ever end up being in a position to cross paths and be like, oh, it'd be cool to train with him because he's obviously wrestling and jiu-jitsu complement each other. So that'd be like a good guy to like work with and pick his brain and stuff. But if one of those things, if it was on a big card and everything lined up, I'm not opposed to it. You know what I mean? But that's again, we all got fights to take care of first and then kind of see what direction we're going. And I would think hopefully I get fast tracked a little bit closer to a title shot. But if that's the fight the UFC want to give me and they're paying me like they've been paying me, then I got no problems fighting anybody.
I get the sense that if the money's right and the ranking slash opponent makes sense, you don't give a F who it is. You'll throw down with anyone. Am I correct?
Pretty much, yeah. Outside of like, close teammates, pretty much
Sure.
anybody. And even then, like I've talked before with some of my good training partners, like even this is years and years ago, before I was even at Kill Cliff, but me and Brendan would always joke around like unless it's a title fight or $1 million, like we're not fighting each other. So if we're both getting paid and the price is right, then we just gotta suck it up and go do it and actually get paid for once.
Money talks, man. Money talks.
Yeah.
Gerald, last thing I want to do, if you still have, it's been like 16 minutes. You still have like 3 minutes?
Oh yeah, yeah, we're good.
Appreciate it. So I know you were on the Show Me the Money or Show Me Your Money podcast, and you did the best. I think you guys did the best grapplers in the UFC. I want to do a
Yeah.
similar game, except I don't know how much of a historian you are, but if you have a YouTube or Twitter, you've seen the clips from these fights. I want to do a UFC best pound for pound comeback of all time. So
Okay.
I'll give you a fight compared to another fight. You give me which one was the better comeback. We'll go down the list. Does that make sense?
Works for me.
I'm pretty sure you've seen all these fights, or at least the comeback. They're all pretty famous.
Probably.
So we're gonna start with the first one I have. Anderson Silva, specifically beating Chael Sonnen with that fifth round triangle, or Czech Congo knocking out Pat Barry after their crazy exchange.
Ooh. I would say the more exciting one would probably be Czech Congo and Pat Barry because it was just pure chaos the entire time. But pound for pound, better one to come back from the whipping that Anderson Silva was getting. I got to go with that one.
You're taking Silva.
Yeah.
I agree there. But okay, so here's another one, another legend one. Anderson Silva or Brock Lesnar's comeback on Shane Carwin, if you remember that one.
Oh yeah, I do remember that one. Uh, Actually, I'll go with Carwin and Lesnar because there were several times in that first round where they could have called that fight. The
Yeah.
first and second round, I believe, like I was actually kind of amazed it kept going. I believe if I remember correctly, that was another Herb Dean special. So that's yeah.
He said, "All right, I'm going to give this hype train some more time," and it worked out. So
Yeah.
good job, Herb Dean. And then this is one that I remember where I was watching. I remember like what my expression reaction was. Everything. I was so shocked. Brock Lesnar or Yair Rodriguez knocking out Korean Zombie with 1 second left.
Oh, that For
Big
a
elbow.
comeback, you got to go with Yair Rodriguez on that one because not only was it 1 second left, but it was the most ridiculous, unorthodox throwaway. And I'm not saying this to be mean, but I don't care what Yair Rodriguez ever says in any interview. You can't be like, oh, yeah, I practice that all the time. It's like, no, you threw that shit and it happened to hit. Like, even if you did practice it, to have him running in like that, because if Korean Zombie was just like took his foot off the gas just a little bit, was like, I'll just, throw jabs on the outside. I got this. But, to his credit, both their toughness, he kept going after him and just landed a beautiful, beautiful, like spinning upward back elbow. And that was the most ridiculous thing I've ever seen in my life.
And this is a pretty recent one too. Yair Rodriguez, or I think it was UFC 229, Derek Lewis knocking out Alexander Volkov in the last round after getting it looked like he had a broken orbital the whole fight, and then he
Oh
hits
yeah.
Volkov with the punch.
I would still that was an awesome fight. And that was like kind of, if I remember correctly, that was kind of like the real big boost and start of like Derek Lewis. You know what I mean? But I'll still go with Yair for comebacks on that one.
This one might be tough because I got Yair Rodriguez or the head kick felt around the world, Leon Edwards, Kamaru Usman.
I Yeah, yours is definitely crazier, but I guess I would have to like impact on the sport in general. I would have to go with Leon's on that one because again, like that was, you know, Kamaru didn't even really do anything wrong. You know what I'm saying? Like it just he happened to throw a good shot. And like he was again getting same in both fights, but like especially that one, Kamaru was like winning unquestionably like everything up to that point. Um, and it was a title fight, so like the stakes were just a bit bigger. But I would pick that one.
Two left. This next one, another big one for the sport itself. Nate Diaz not surprised over Conor McGregor, or or Leon Edwards.
Oh, Nate Diaz for sure.
Yeah,
I mean, that was like the most, and then that one, that was even more competitive up to that point. But just the trajectory of the career of Nate Diaz before and after that fight, like the build up of it, like it helped both of them. Like I think it even helped boost Conor a little bit too, for sure.
yep.
But like just everything about that, like that one really like shook the MMA world and for like a guy that seemed untouchable. And then all of a sudden, of all people, like a veteran like Nate Diaz coming in there and doing what he did, that was like nuts for months and well, however long it was until they fought again.
And the last one, can it derail Nate Diaz? One of my personal favorites, but no bias allowed. GM3 when he beat Muradov.
My odds, I was probably, I don't know, actually, maybe it would have been pretty close. I'm not sure. That'd be actually an interesting question to find out what the betting lines were if I was a bigger underdog than Nate Diaz was. Nate Diaz and Conor McGregor, for sure, that was a way bigger fight, but yeah, mine was crazy. It was pretty up there. If you anyone that actually watches all those Apex cards followed the hype train that I was dealing with, and the guy was coming off of like 3 consecutive like KOs or something like that. That was a pretty good one, but I would still have to give the nod to Nate Diaz.
Nate Diaz, Conor McGregor, best comeback of all time. Don't disagree. I think it was a great one. And the mic afterwards, I'm not surprised. So good.
Oh,
Doesn't get better
crazy.
than that. Gerald, before I get you out of here, man, tons and tons of fans looking forward to this fight. Anything you'd like to say to everybody?
Hey, I appreciate everybody watching. I hope to have many more successful years in the UFC and watch me on the Apex November 9th.
You heard it here first. Well, not first, but you heard it here again. November 9th, Gerald Meerschaert throws down at the Apex. Gerald, thank you so much for your time, man. Best of luck. Kick some ass, all right?
Appreciate you, Jake.